heard you missed us. We're back. This is You're All Doomed, the podcast that ordinarily goes through the Friday the 13th movies 13 minutes at a time, but is currently covering the fan films. I'm blue-eyed murderer in a size 5 dress, Greg.
And I'm just Brian.
And these Van Halen jokes would make a lot more sense if this movie had actually been called Jason Unchained like I initially thought. But instead, it's called Jason Unleashed.
We could still go along with it. Yeah. What is it like? Leashed, ain't nothing stays. Policed, unleashed. Hit the
I was going to say you should invite your friends from and the podcast Will Rock to cover this episode with us, but then it would make even less sense.
So we finally get a shorter fan film to cover. This one is only 20 minutes long. It came out May 13th, 2022, which I'm guessing was a Friday, and was made with a budget of about $1,300.
And I mean, aside from the blissful shorter length, I cannot tell you how happy I was to hear accents from the United Kingdom when this fan film started. It made me think back to one of the first fan films we did, and that's exactly like what I am kind of wanting from these fan films. Is so many of these are highly polished, pretty competently made, full length feature films practically by very experienced people and with a lot of money to put towards them. And I kind of like these more scraping the bottom of the barrel fan films. There's a little charm that I feel like they bring to it that makes me overlook the fact that nobody in Crystal Lake would have accents from Stoke-on-Trent in the middle of England. But, or like some of the janky special effects. I just think that they're more fun to me.
I can't disagree with you. It's always a little like jarring when you first hear someone talk in one of these fan films and they're like, oh, these guys are from Liverpool or, wherever they're from. And it was like, it just takes a second to like recalibrate. But I agree. I mean, that's what these fan films are all about. Like, show us something different, show us something that we're not expecting to see, and don't feel like you need to explain why this particular one is taking place in England. I think they make some attempts to make it seem like it's actually still in New Jersey, but like, they're not British people trying to put on American accents. They're just like, screw it. Like, we'll pretend this is taking place.
Or even driving on the proper side of the car.
Right. Yeah. Like, they're not going to do anything to like change those expectations. And that's fine. Like, I don't care. But yes, it was, like the one you mentioned, I think it may have been either the first or the second fan film we covered, where it was just like really just, thick English accents and just not what we were expecting at all. But now we're kind of accustomed to seeing lots of different things. And I welcomed it. I was like, this is great. I'm settling in.
Yeah. And it always serves to remind me that, surprisingly, Jason has a pretty global reach. I would have thought that, campfire tale slasher movies would have been kind of a more American-only interest, but clearly not. I mean, people listen to this show from all around the world, and that's kind of cool. I like that people from other countries enjoy these movies too.
What I like to think, and I'm not 100% certain, but I feel like this was filmed around Liverpool, like the accents seem very Liverpudlian, which makes me wonder if the Beatles were aware of Jason Voorhees, because, he drowned in the 50s, and the Beatles would have broken up by the time Mrs. Voorhees went on her rampage. But if, and we're getting mixed signals in terms of like where this is actually taking place. But like, if it did take place in Liverpool, I like the idea of the Beatles knowing about the curse of Camp Crystal Lake.
As long as we don't go like Jason goes to Manhattan and kills John Lennon, that would be a bit much.
That could be.
This movie opens with a father telling his way too young son the campfire story of the boy who drowned, complete with decapitation of Mrs. Voorhees. And I object to that parenting technique. I feel like the kid is going to be severely frightened of being in the woods.
Kid's got to toughen up. He's going to learn what the real world is like. And, if his dad feels like now's the time to tell him, then who am I to criticize his parenting skills? And we're recording this on Father's Day. Like, how dare you, how dare you criticize his fathering?
Impugn someone else's, yeah. Fair enough. But, next he's going to tell him the story of the night he was conceived. It turns out that it's this little boy Billy's birthday, and he's given a present. Billy is given the same knife that I gave you from Yellowstone National Park.
So there was a few things here that I thought were pretty hilarious. So for obvious reasons, I'm not really paying attention to what the kid is wearing or the father is wearing. Like, I just see a father and son sitting around the campfire having this talk. And then when the father reveals this gift, it's in a white sack. And when he's opening up the white sack, I thought to myself, oh, wouldn't it be funny if the kid was wearing overalls? And they cut back to the kid, and sure enough, he's basically wearing Jason's outfit from part 2, which was absolutely hilarious. And he was wearing it the whole time. I just didn't pick up on it until the sack made an appearance. And I'm like, that is just hilarious. And it gets even more hilarious as this movie goes on. But it was such a great revelation of like, oh wow, they really dressed this kid like Jason Voorhees from part 2. Like, they're going for it.
There's some details in the background, like their tent that they brought to camp in is a Euro hike tent. And it reminded me of Die Hard 2 when he's supposed to be at Dulles Airport in Washington, D.C., but all the telephones are Pacific Bell.
Mm-hmm.
So they go to sleep, and sometime in the night, Billy hears a noise in the woods, and immediately, because he heard this terrifying story, thinks it's Jason, but his father dismisses it as an urban legend. And I mean, this is nitpicking, but I don't know that I would qualify Jason as an urban legend because, I mean, they're in the wilderness. It's more like a local legend or, like folklore. But urban legend to me feels like a different category of myth.
Billy is scared about the noise that is going on in the woods, and so he asks his dad to go investigate. And so he leaves Billy behind in the tent and goes walking through the woods with a flashlight. And
which are some nice, spooky, dark woods, I thought.
I thought so too. Yeah, that was another thing. And we can talk about this later too, but just I thought this movie looked really good. When I was surprised when it said that the budget was £1,000. I'm like, wow, like, filming at night is not easy to do. And I thought they did a good job of lighting the woods, but not making them too bright.
Dad is beginning to regret telling his son this story as the woods are getting creepier and creepier. And then, get your drinks ready because he steps on a leaf-covered Camp Crystal Lake sign. So the drinking game continues.
I don't think there's a drone shot in this movie, and I don't think that there was one in the previous one we covered either. The Here Comes the Night Part 3.
No, I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right.
Because it was kind of like a common element that we were seeing in all these movies, and then suddenly we've got 2 in a row where we don't. But yes, we're going to get at least one of them, and the sign being revealed underneath a pile of leaves and dirt is definitely the other. So as Billy's dad is walking around, Jason shows up, and he looks a lot like Vince Neil from Motley Crue, but not like Vince Neil in his prime, like Vince Neil now. And he's got really long, stringy blonde hair and like bald patches, and he's like a pretty big dude, and it's a very different look from what we've seen from Jason, which again, not a criticism, it's just a different version of Jason. So I guess this is like, this is what Jason would look like in Liverpool.
The dad gets beheaded by Jason, and I love the fake decapitated neck. I mean, it looks like a rubber mannequin or something. It's just so adorable. It was great.
I felt the exact same way. Like, it would be so easy to criticize it and be like, oh, it looks terrible. But like, I found it to be utterly charming just because of how bad it looked, and the filmmakers absolutely know that. They're not trying to convince us that this is real. But yeah, there's like two elements of it where you get kind of like an older over the shoulder shot of Jason swinging the machete, and you can see that it's just like a mannequin head off to the side of the screen. And then it cuts, and then you just see like this plastic, like what's left of the neck with a little bit of blood spurting out, and it looks really fake, but I don't care. I thought it was really just cute and fun.
We cut back to Billy, who peers outside of the tent, and he sees that Jason is standing between him and the campfire, kind of backlit, and standing in a menacing fashion. And then we smash to the title card, and I kind of love the Part 3-esque music that they have playing over the title sequence. I think it was pretty great.
I like the music too.
Yeah, I thought it was good, and I really liked the CGI skull that morphs into the hockey mask as the credits conclude.
I liked that as well. That was something that we hadn't really seen before because it was just a cool graphic. Yeah, like you said, just the skull kind of morphing into the hockey mask was very cool.
Yeah. This movie was written by Brian J. Madison and Dominic Matthews and directed by Brian J. Madison. We then cut to 3 months later when an angry wood chopper is really selling that he's unhappy about something. I mean, unclench your teeth, dude.
This might be my favorite character in all the fan films so far because he is trying so hard to convey that he's angry. And every time he says something, I just love it. He's just like literally gritting his teeth, and he's just like, I told you. I ain't seen no father or son. And it's like, it's just really like emphasizing every word.
That was a remarkably good impression.
And it's like blood vessels are popping out of his head, and like it's the only way that he can talk. I absolutely love this guy.
Yeah, he's great. It turns out that brother of the dad who just got beheaded 3 months ago is out looking for his brother and nephew. I'm going to call him David Brent, and he doesn't look like Ricky Gervais, but he does something later that made me like totally think of David Brent. So that's what I'm going to refer to him as. So we never really learn his name.
I didn't think so either. I just called him Bearded Dude because I didn't know what else to call him. But I'm curious to see what the David Brent connection is.
The tooth-clenching guy, Anger Man, is drinking out of a little bottle of hooch that he refers to as Kathleen, which is a nice little reference back to Part 6.
I did not pick up on that. I just thought it was bizarre that he was calling it Kathleen, but was it the gravedigger?
Yeah, the caretaker was singing the "Oh Kathleen."
Okay, that's pretty cool.
And yeah, David Brent hops in the car and drives off, and he's on the right-hand side where the steering wheel is over across the pond. So that's another dead giveaway that we are not in New Jersey. And there's one shot of the woods that are now, it's daylight, but there's no movement. So I'm pretty sure they just took a picture of a postcard and show it a couple times, which, again, adds to the very hands-on approach to making this movie.
We cut back to the angry wood chopper, and he's still bitching about people coming in the woods, and he puts his axe down so that he can take a leak against a tree. And I've never understood, like, you see this a lot in movies, like if you're out in the middle of the woods and there's no one around, like why do you have to pee against a tree? Like why can't you just stop in any opening and just pee? Are you just creating like an obstacle between you and whoever else might be staring down at you like head on, and so they can't see you peeing? Like
Is there some sort of weird like vestigial programming to scent mark territory that we, mindlessly adhere to? I mean, I don't randomly pee in the woods a whole lot. I mean, I guess if I've been on a hike and it's an emergency, I will pee. I won't wait for a restroom, but yeah, it is a trope, and I'm not sure what it signifies.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter. I think it's funny, but the angry woodchopper, shakes it off, and he turns around and notices that his axe is missing, and Jason is now standing right in front of him, face to face, holding the axe, and he quickly deposits it into Angry Woodchopper's chest.
So farewell to your favorite character.
I know he didn't last very long, but
He made an impression.
he did.
David Brent is now, he's arrived at the entrance to Camp Crystal Lake and heads right on in. And there was one detail that I thought was really cool. He passes kind of a like what you would think was a map of like a structure that would have a map of the camp or perhaps camp rules and regulations, but it's covered with missing posters. So that was a really cool idea and pretty spooky.
I like that too. There was at least like half a dozen different missing posters on there from various years, and including a pair of like two sisters, it looks like, or maybe they were friends. I don't remember. But yeah, I like that it just very easily and quickly posited that this is not an uncommon occurrence. People go missing here, and people know that there's something wrong with these woods, and so they're posting these missing people posters, which is a cool little touch.
The camp is in pretty rough shape. A lot of the cabins look very collapsed, and there's graffiti on a lot of surfaces. And at first, I was wondering who on earth would come and tag Camp Blood, but then he walks past this long building that looks almost like an industrial chicken coop or something, and it's tagged with Jason, which makes me think Jason is probably like an accomplished graffiti artist. He's like Banksy or something.
I do like that. It's certainly more believable than, well, I don't know. It kind of goes back to, it was one of the Never Hike movies where we got into the debate about whether or not Jason was carving his name into the hood of a car, and I was saying Jason doesn't know how to spell, why would he be doing that? And it turns out it wasn't Jason anyway. But like I have less of a problem with him being a talented graffiti artist and just tapping into his creative side. So yeah, I'll buy it.
We get a shot of Crystal Lake. It's not perfect. It looks a little more like the pond in part 3, but it's moody, and I can live with it, especially with the budget that you've revealed this movie had.
The buildings are really cool, though.
Yeah,
like
they are.
Those are real buildings. Like they clearly didn't build those for this movie. So like, I do wonder what this place was, because like some of these buildings are really run down, and there's some with like the walls have like completely caved in, and so like only half of the building is accessible. And so wherever it is, it kudos to the filmmakers for finding this place, because it is a great little set piece.
Agreed. He catches sight of someone and follows this figure into a brick house, a little more of a sturdy structure, but still in pretty bad shape, and finds a bunch of old cell phones, which I thought was super creepy as well. Must have, been owned by all those missing people, although clearly the authorities haven't searched this camp very, very thoroughly. And we find Pamela Voorhees' severed head,
which to me looks a little bit more like Jennifer Tilly's character from Bride of Chucky than it does Pamela Voorhees. But yeah, I had the same question, because it comes up a little bit later too in a conversation that Bearded Dude has with someone else. But like, there's a lot of evidence in this one particular building that he's currently in, and it's like, how has no one found this? It's not like it didn't appear to be a very rugged hike to get to this place, and it's a pretty significant building. It's like a brick building, so you're not gonna overlook it. But yeah, like all the evidence you need that there's been crimes committed is there. There's piles of sleeping bags, there's the cell phones, there's the wallets, there's a severed head. It's like like
other than that,
yeah, like what else do you need to
well, and I love that
case?
everyone's out front putting up missing signs, and they're like, should we go look in the brick building? Nah, I'm sure there's nothing there.
Let's just stop here and put these thumbtacks in the bulletin board and leave.
David Brent is pretty sure that he sees Billy outside and running off into the woods. So he follows, and we see that Jason is watching all of this. Uncle David finds the campsite where his brother and nephew had been hanging out and looks in the tent. He finds a cuddly little stuffed bear, but is suddenly held at AK-47 point by Ali G.
Yeah, this hunter shows up, and he just spouts off the usual, you don't belong here. It's not safe. If someone went missing in these woods, they're gone for good, etc. But yeah, he's got he's a weird character. We learn that Jason killed a bunch of this hunter dude's friends a while back, and the hunter dude was left for dead but got away. And so he's been hunting Jason ever since, with an AK-47, apparently.
I mean, if you're going to go up against Jason, take a Kalashnikov. It's your best bet.
I guess so. And then, just as this movie has one of my favorite characters, this movie also has one of my favorite kills, just because of the pure like abruptness of it, where like mid-sentence the hunter is saying all this stuff about what happened to him with Jason, and like completely unnoticed, Jason just marches up behind the hunter. Like, I mean, these woods are pretty wide open, there's not a lot of places to hide. Jason just marches up behind him, and there's a like terrible but still hilarious edit where it just like he punches and then rips out his heart at the same time, and it's they kind of botch it a little bit, but it made me laugh because it was like this hunter who's been hunting Jason for who knows how long didn't even seem to notice Jason walking up right behind him in a wide open space.
Yeah. David Brent books it, leaving his backpack behind. And Jason stands there for a moment looking at the heart that he's just punched out of this victim. And I seriously, for a second, thought he was going to smash it against his forehead.
Or take a bite of it. And then, like, beams of light start shooting out of him.
Right. So there's a pursuit through the woods, and David Brent... He finds out that he's been running in a big circle because he arrives back at the campsite that he just fled. So whatever circuitous route he was taking through the woods, it did not get him anywhere to safety. And the reason I'm calling him David Brent is because he does the most hilarious, like, oh no, when he leans back. And it reminded me when David Brent was at the quiz night and asked over the phone, he was talking to his father's nurse and asked over the phone who sang In the Summertime. Mungo Jerry. I laughed out loud. I thought it was so goddamn funny.
So, Uncle Beard is happy to see Billy, and as they're hugging, bearded guy lets out kind of like a and Billy has just stabbed his uncle in the stomach with the very knife his father gave him. This was a very strange twist, not just of the knife in his gut, but like, wasn't really expecting the movie to go in this direction. And so, hey, bravo, you surprised me, but it's not often that you see a little 7-year-old boy stab his uncle in the stomach with a camping knife.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. And it was like when I first noticed that Billy was wearing overalls, I thought to myself, like, oh, I wonder if Jason's going to get a little pal in this movie. So when that's where it wound up going, I was kind of clapping and cheering. Jason bends down and picks up the bag that the gift had been in and puts it over Billy's head. So he's wearing the little hooded sack from part 2. But the part that makes me laugh is like Jason then has to poke an eye hole in it. So was Billy wearing it and Jason like scratched through or like used the knife? Or I'm picturing, I wish we'd had that moment of Jason making the little eye hole.
I wondered where the eye hole came from as well, because the sack has been laying there for 3 months and it was in pristine condition. It was still like, beautifully white sack. So when he put it on, I'm like, well, why was there a little hole in it? But I do like the idea of like
Billy, here's a pencil, mark where your eye is when I put the bag on, then I'll take the bag off, poke a hole, and then put it back on.
He's got like crafting scissors that he's using to like carefully cut out the hole.
So this movie ends with a shot of Jason walking through the mists, accompanied by his little pal Billy. I loved it absolutely. I just wish that they'd like reached out and begun holding hands.
I wanted them to play that song where it's like, "Let me tell you about my best friend,"
Courtship of Eddie's father.
right? And just have like a prolonged montage of them like, walking on the beach and like,
That soft focus through a field in the sunlight with the dust motes floating around and
like grilling hot dogs by a campfire. And like, there was just something.
spray painting some buildings together.
Yeah. No, there's only one S in Jason, son. It was so funny, and like just seeing like mini sackhead Jason was just so like, I don't know how I feel about it. He looked like a walking Funko Pop or something. And it was just, I loved every second of it. I'm not making fun of it. Like I truly enjoyed it.
Oh, it brought me so much happiness.
It's just like, because like my mind just started wandering. Like, Jason's got a little pal, and they're gonna like, Jason's gonna show him the ropes and teach him how to kill people, and like Jason's finally made a friend, and it's like this is a happy story, people.
I mean, okay, I absolutely love it, and this is so far my favorite fan film. But I do have some mild criticisms. I feel like, I mean, Jason has displayed in the movies. Jason has displayed at least curiosity about younger children. He was looming over that little girl in part 6, and almost like, not protectively, but just like, I'm not going to hurt her, but I just like, this is a little kid, and so I mean, he's never murdered a small child. He was going after Corey Feldman, but Corey Feldman was a little bit older. So the fact that Jason wouldn't have just flat out murdered Billy is established. I feel like if he was going to truly adopt him as a little sidekick, that it would have made more sense to me if Billy had maybe something a little bit wrong with him, like maybe like a cleft palate or like an eye patch, not like a pirate eye patch, but like a medical eye patch, or just something that would have connected with Jason being an outsider. Billy just seemed like a normal kid. And so I feel like there's room there to maybe explore that a little more than they did. And I also just don't think Billy is a very scary name.
No, you're right. I do like the idea of it probably working better if Billy did have some sort of like disability or something that just connected him to Jason a little bit more, where he saw himself in Billy. Rather than just raising this boy because he happened to kill his father. And, like Jason doesn't talk. So how do they communicate? And how did Billy know that he needed to kill his uncle? Was there like some signal that he and Jason had, or like, Jason kind of like pulls on his hockey mask or something. And Billy's like, okay, that means I got to kill again. But it was just something that is probably supposed to be very disturbing, and it is. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, this little kid killing someone is very disturbing, but I just can't help but just find a lot of joy in the thought of Jason and Billy living happily ever after,
romping around the woods like Calvin and fucking Hobbes,
causing trouble, and just being little hellions. And,
yeah, I mean, just like little miniature sackhead Jason is adorable.
Yeah, like I want to see the sequel where we get like the tween version of Billy.
Like Groot, like we start getting.
Right. And so like he gets like a hockey mask that's just like a little bit too small, or maybe it's like a little bit too big because
it's a little too big. Yeah, right.
And so like we see the evolution of like little Billy grow up into full grown Billy. But yeah, I just 20 minutes is all this movie needed to be.
Yep.
And it scratched a lot of itches for me.
Yep.
And
5 stars, hands down. 5 stars.
Absolutely. And then again, this is like what we want to see in a fan film, like do something completely different. And it doesn't really matter if it like makes sense. I mean, ideally you're doing something, like you're putting some thought into it, but
I mean, I want it to be coherent, but it's okay if it gets wackadoo.
Yeah. And again, like the fact that this was 20 minutes, I think is the reason why it worked. If someone had decided to stretch this out into like an hour long or something, it just wouldn't have worked. You didn't even really have time to think about where it was going. And it was like, oh, look, the kid's dressed like part 2 Jason. That's funny. But I don't know if at any point I thought that he was going to be killing people by the end of the movie, unless there was some kind of like time jump. And I certainly didn't think the little boy version was going to be doing it. So when that happened, I was like, oh, it's pretty crazy. And then just seeing them walk off into the woods together was heartwarming.
Well, and I wonder if like later, like when they get back to Jason's shack, is Billy going to poke another eye hole in the bag? Because he both of his eyes work. I mean, Jason only used one eye hole because he's got that one wonky eye that probably doesn't, like, he's probably blind in that eye. But Billy can see out of both, so he's like, I need some depth perception, dude.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, come on, Dad. Just because you have one eye doesn't mean I have to.
Okay, son. I loved it, hands down.
Yeah.
Thanks for sitting through this one with us. Be sure to rate and review our show if you've enjoyed it. That helps us get visibility and grow the audience. And we're always glad to hear from you. So reach out to us on social media. We're on Instagram and Facebook under Yad Podcast. Next time, we're going to be talking about The Fall of Camp Blood. It's a 52-minute long fan film from May 13th of 2022.
If you're interested in hearing my pitch for Jason Unleashed 2, where Sackhead Billy gets a girlfriend, tune into the next episode of You're All
Mungo Jerry.
Dude.